Week 16 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few running backs I looked at off the wire this week. The first guy, Ty Chandler of the Minnesota Vikings. Even if Alexander Mattison comes back this week, I think Ty Chandler is going to get a lot of work and become the guy in this backfield the remainder of the season. So week 15, in his first start at Cincinnati, 23 carries, 132 rush yards, a touchdown, 3 catches, 25 yards. So Chandler, I've said it for weeks in my videos, he's a better receiver out of the backfield to begin with than Alexander Mattison. He looks comfortable in between the tackles, and he's an elusive running back that it took Cincinnati a lot of effort to get him down in that ball game. So I know week 16, a tougher matchup versus the Lions. I give up the third least amount of fantasy points to running backs on the season. But like I said, Ty Chandler's getting an opportunity. He could do a little bit of everything out there in the backfield for Minnesota. And right now, it's surprising to me he's out there in 50% of fantasy leagues. And the top pickup at the running back position this week, the next running back, Zamir White of the Las Vegas Raiders. So I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to return or not in this game, but Zamir White, he's out there in 85% of fantasy leagues, and he had a nice ball game in his only start of the season in week 15 versus the Chargers. 17 carries, 69 yards, a touchdown and 3 catches, 16 yards. A big physical back. They got him last season in the third round of the NFL draft. He is Zamir White, and he finally had an opportunity. So right now, week 16 is going to be a little different type of game. Like I said, I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to return in the ball game or not for this Las Vegas Raider team. But anyway, at the Kansas City Chiefs, it's going to be a ball game where they're going to be most likely trailing early and often and might have to abandon the run. But at this point of the season, if you could find the starting running back like Zamir White, you got to go out there and get him, even if it's for your bench for fantasy owners. But for one of your opponents in the final four of this week's matchups, picks him up. So he's available, like I said, 85% of fantasy leagues. Next running back squad, Edwards-Helaire of the Kansas City Chiefs. Edwards-Helaire, a high draft pick many seasons ago for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he just never panned out. And Isaiah Pacheco was having a great season until he's been down over the last couple weeks. So the last 2 weeks in starts for Pacheco for Edwards-Helaire. Week 14 versus the Bills, 11 carries, 39 yards, 2 catches, 29 yards. In week 15 at the Pats, a nice ball game, 13 carries, 37 yards, 4 catches, 64 yards, and he found the end zone. So week 16, a good matchup versus the Raiders that give up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. So Pacheco coming off his shoulder surgery. I don't know if he's going to play in this game or not, or return pretty quick. But to believe it or not, I think this Chief team should go one more week at least, where they're going with Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon out of the backfield, because both these running backs have stepped up this week's ball game, with McKinnon even having a throwing touchdown on a little reverse toss play going forward on scrimmage in New England. So Edwards-Helaire coming off at 20 fantasy points, available in 59% of fantasy leagues. And right now, if you could go out there and get Edwards-Helaire, I think he can help fantasy owners, obviously, as long as he's starting. But even if he's not, he's still running back to keep in mind, because just coming off that shoulder surgery, I don't think Pacheco is going to get a full workload right away. The next back I looked at off the wire is Justice Hill with the Baltimore Ravens. Keaton Mitchell, he was getting most of the work. Him and Gus Edwards 50-50, but Keaton Mitchell stopped short in that game and his knee buckled. And to be honest, it's most likely a torn ACL or some type of knee tear for Keaton Mitchell. The way he got buckled into the turf, and he had to be helped off the field and carted off the field. So Justice Hill available right now in tons of fantasy leagues at 87%. And we know he's had success in the past as Justice Hill, but obviously health has been a concern for him as well. But now with Keaton Mitchell out of the lineup and most likely out for the season, Hill and Edwards, I believe, will be in a 50-50 split. And he's a running back to pick up this week, and the 5th and final running back I look to get off the wire this week here is Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Chase Brown, the last 3 weeks, he's definitely getting work. Where this team's running the football more is this Bengal team since Joe Burrow went down with injury, and Brown's been a nice guy to come in and take some work away from Joe Mixon, a change of pace back and a speedy guy out of the backfield. Week 13 at Jacksonville, 9 carries, 61 yards. Week 14 versus Indianapolis, 8 carries, 25 yards, 3 catches, 80 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown. And week 15 versus Minnesota, 7 carries, 23 rush yards, 3 catches, 28 yards, 8 to 10 touches over the last few weeks. Chase Brown has been getting for the Cincinnati Bengal team. And this Bengal team's been riding high even with Joe Burrow out for the season, winning 3 games in a row. And if Jamar Chase does miss this week's ball game at the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think they're going to run the football a little bit more and set up some screens and small plays to Chase Brown where he comes in for Joe Mixon. So right now, if you need a guy on the bench or just a handcuff to Joe Mixon in the final weeks here of the fantasy football season, Chase Brown has looked good the last 3 weeks, available in 80% of fantasy leagues. So that's a few running backs I looked at off the wire for week 16 of the fantasy football season.